To many families around the country, not only is their sons or their daughters very important to them, but also their pets. And in this video, that's what I'm going to talk about. But specifically, I'm going to talk about dogs in terms of flying with American Airlines. What is needed to be able to make that happen. And for some people, they might not think it's a need for them, but it's a need for others, and it does happen all the time, where pets fly checked or in the cabin. So that's what I will talk about when the video returns.
It's not a game, it's a rich thing.
How many of you wish that you knew someone that you... Hey guys, David the Ring here. Welcome to No Frontier. This is a travel channel. When it comes to all things travel, here is my job to encourage people to get out there, to create their own experiences and to form their own opinions, because as I know, more exposure leads to expansion. As I mentioned before, many people look at their pets as a part of their family, a family member, and essentially they spend all the time with you, they give you this unconditional love. And so what happens if you want to travel with your pet? Now, I know in some instances, those individuals, and if it's a short trip, maybe a 2-day trip, they might have a family member stop by, make sure the dog is fed, or drop it off with a family member or a friend, roommate, whatever the case may be. Well, what happens if it's extended, an extended trip, and you really want your pet in this situation to be in this situation, the dog, to be a part of your whole experience? What do you do, and how do you get them to travel with you? And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about flying in cabin, your pet, and being checked. This is the policy of American Airlines. You can only travel with a cat or a dog when it comes to in the cabin. Taking it up on board, it can only be those two. Now, when it comes to checking in animals, they can go underneath the plane. Now, I've seen all type of animals go under, whether it's piglets, birds, all type of fish, etc. I can go on and on. But when we talk about in the cabin, those are your two choices. But once again, let's stick to dogs, because in another video, I'll talk about cats. When you think about, can my dog travel inside the cabin, one of the things off the top we'll talk about is there's a 20-pound limit. So between your pet and whatever carry case you have your pet in, that's the limit, 20 pounds, in order to go inside of the plane. And also in this video, I'm going to talk about regular pets as well as emotional support, trained dogs, customers, whatnot. So I'll talk about the difference in that. So 20-pound limit is service animal, 20-pound limit is what it is. Now, service animals are permitted on the plane. As I don't know if you've ever flown out and you've seen the dog lay down, right in front of the customer, the passenger. That is a service animal. And you can't just have a pet and say that this is my service animal or my emotional support dog. You will need documentation to be able to prove that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, just because you can fly some pets in the cabin, it doesn't mean that's permitted in all routes. Now, some of the routes that you can't travel with your pet, your dog, is like going to Hawaii, or transatlantic flights, or going to countries like Bolivia, Uruguay, Venezuela, Argentina. Those are some of the places where you can't travel with your pet. So keep that in mind, and if you need for me to tell you again, just ask me. Chile is another one of those countries that you can't travel with your pet for whatever reason. Now, what is the size of the carrier needed to be able to travel with you? Now, the carrier must be no longer than 23 inches long, 13 inches wide, and 9 inches high. Essentially, your carrier is going to be a small carrier, and your pet needs to be able to have a little bit of room to stand or just move around just a bit. Sturdy, but able to keep them in, but allow them a little bit of flexibility. So that's that. Now, what about the fee? People want to know, is this free? How does that work? Now, if you are going in the cabin, once again, the fee is $125 per animal, and that's one way. So if you're going round trip, be ready to cough up $250 to fly in cabin with your dog. That's another fee that you may not think about, but now you know that number. Another thing, if you're flying with your dog, you cannot utilize curbside check-in. You know, when you get to a lot of airports, they're able to get your bags right there on the curb. But when you're flying with a pet, you cannot do that. So just think you might need some extra time in order to check in, because now you have this precious living animal that you like to go with, so you can't do curbside pickup. Now, remember I said service animals are different. There's no fee for service animals. That's like an extension of you, a necessary animal that works along with you, so there's no fee for that. So a regular passenger flying with their pet, remember I said $125 per way. The service animal, there's no charge, and obviously you're gonna have to show proof of whether or not this is truly a service animal. And always remember this, that your pet has to fit under the seat, in some cases on your lap. It can't be seated in the center aisle, because obviously people have to go to the restroom. Flight attendants have to go through with the drink carts and other things. So in the case of emergency, people have to be able to move freely, if you will. In order to successfully do this, a LMHP letter must be completed, as well as also for the emotional support dogs. In other words, you're gonna have these forms to fill out, some of it by way of the US DOT, Department of Transportation, and this is where you clearly state what your disability is and your pet. You know, these are very serious things. You can't just show up and just say, this is my support dog, or this is my trained dog. You can't just show up and that be the case. Now, what is the charge if we're going under the plane now, what is the charge if you're checking your pet almost like cargo? Now that is $175. Now remember, in cabin was $125 per way, under the plane is $175 per way. So obviously it's more money when you put the pet down below. After February of this year, only trained service animals can fly in the cabin with a US DOT form. Pets can't fly in extreme weather, so that's another thing. If it's very hot or very cold, your pet might not be able to travel because it might be too harsh for them. You don't want a situation where you arrive in your destination and receive bad news that something has happened to your pet. Now, is there a clear limit as to the amount of pets that you can travel with? Now, per ticketed customer, your limit is two animals. So obviously you will have to pay for 2 separate animals. That doesn't happen quite so often where people are traveling with 2 dogs, but this is your limit, just in case you had that in mind. So I hope this video was helpful, guys. As always, this is what I'm here for, to help you guys out. But also, besides everything that I said, I'll end it off with this. When you're ready to fly with your pet, find out if the breed of dog is allowed to fly on a certain flight, because each plane is different. So depending on the breed, and in other videos we'll talk about other animals. Depending on what type of animal, it will tell you whether it's allowed to go on the plane that you're flying on. All right, so once again, thank you to the old and new supporters. Continue to tell people about the channel, continue to ask questions and leave comments down below. As always, David the Ring, No Frontier, over and out. See you on the next one. See you.